Hey guys, thanks for joining me for Watercolor Wednesday. Today we're going to do a really cool kind of landscape, which has kind of a unique style to it. So to me, it kind of resembles a little bit of, not animation, kind of like you would, I can't even think of the word right now, but it's kind of like you would see it in a comic illustration. There you go, more of like an illustration look. So I will tell you that having some kind of pen, this is a calligraphy marker. You could have a marker, a ballpoint pen, a Sharpie pen, whatever you want would be helpful for the very last step, okay? So we're gonna go ahead and we're gonna keep this painting. We're not gonna go all the way out. So we're gonna learn to have control over our painting right in the center, which is different than what we're usually doing. It's just a really cool style and a really cool technique that you could look up. Some people will use paint tape to do a border. Some will even make a full circle, which is a little harder, but we'll get to. This is more of a, we're gonna let it kind of wash out in the middle, okay? So you're gonna wanna grab a watercolor palette. I've got my individual watercolors I've made. You could grab a palette of any kind, you know, even one like this, any type of palette. Water, paintbrushes, and of course I always have a napkin handy. And for some of you, you may prefer to use a pencil and an eraser. I'm not going to use that today, but you may feel comfortable with it, and I'm totally fine with that. So go ahead and I'll give you a minute to grab your essentials in case you need a second. I'm grabbing my my Sharpie really quick as well. So I'll be right back. You grab whatever you need. So to me, the best pens are called micron pens, and they're acid-free pens. So that means they'll keep their color for a long time. However, little Sharpie thin markers like this, you want the ultra fine, will work as well. So I'm gonna go ahead and grab some of those. So I'm opening up mine. So I'll use that for my little last technique to really make this look like a nice illustration, okay? So again, this is different than what we usually do. We're keeping our color in the center. So you could see I already got some a little off. That's okay. Okay. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to wet my brush. I like using a pointy brush of some sort. And I'm going to grab like a blue, a soft blue. So light blue if you have one. You can make a bluish gray if that works better for you. So this is a camping landscape, okay? We're going to have a tent and everything. So I'm going to go in and I'm going to just kind of shade around like this, okay? And you can see I'm kind of allowing the color just to scribble. So you have to remember to scribble a little bit. And I'm going to kind of start to fade off. Lots of water in my brush. Not enough that it's really hard to control, but just enough that it keeps it nice and soft and dreamy. And that, getting the hang of that just takes some time. You can see I went in a little thicker here. I'm not worried about it. And so I'm going to go ahead and do this soft blue background. Comes up to right about here. And I'm not worried about actually covering in all the rest, okay? So we're just going to keep it like this, and it trickles off to the side, okay? So again, this is a different technique than we usually use. We're not going all the way off to the corners. We're trying to have control over our brush to make this interesting kind of shape. I don't know, I guess it looks kind of like two cat ears, and it comes down on maybe some whiskers. Definitely not a cat, but when I give you an idea of what it kind of looks like, it helps you to put it into perspective. So I'm going to grab a little extra watercolor, and I'm going to come down here and just do kind of like a sweep through. And I don't need to go all the way to the edge. If it's okay if one or two lines get to the edge, no big deal. So you're going to go ahead and do that. I'll give you guys a minute to get that really soft wash, okay? All right, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a pointy brush. And again, after I record this, remember, you can definitely pause as much as you'd like. So I'm gonna take a pointy brush, and this time I could take the same blue or a different blue. I'm taking the same blue, but I'm concentrating on pulling up more pigment. So when I say pigment, that's the color and not water. So I'm actually going around, see I have a big pool right there. I'm going around that. I wanna pick up a lot of pigment, less water. I still need water to make it work, but I don't want too much. I don't want it to be soft and dreamy. Now I'm going for detail, okay? And I'm gonna go in and I'm gonna start doing some lines. It's okay if it bleeds a little. Some are longer, some are shorter. And I think you can tell what these are gonna be. And before I do all of those, I actually want to make sure that I go around here. So I'm gonna take that color and I'm gonna go like this. I'm gonna go up, again, more pigment, and to the side, and then down, okay? So we're gonna leave that area alone there. It's just like an outline. So make a shape like that. That's gonna be your tint, okay? So I go in, and I grab color and I put it back like this. And I'm gonna not go in that little shape I made in my tent, but I am going behind it with as many trees as I feel comfortable making, okay? And we're not worried about any splashes there, okay? So I'm adding, and I'm getting shorter down here with my trees, for sure. Okay? Take a minute to add some of those. They don't have to be perfect. Obviously mine aren't. Great, now from that, I'm gonna go in and I'm gonna do these little scribbles that end up equaling a pine tree. So how I do that, I'm gonna do this big one so you can see. I go out, just these scribbly shelves, so they go all the way across. And they're bigger, definitely longer at the bottom. And they can definitely go over other trees and overlap, because forests do that. They don't, you know, move out of the way for other trees. They overlap. And as I go up, it gets thinner, and these little scribbles get skinnier. Then I could reshape it, because that's really thick there and really thin. So I can kind of bring out a few here. See how they don't have to be connected to the tree trunk. I'm just actually, they're kind of floating here, and then it gets tiny towards the top. So I'm going to do as many of those as I want, as you feel comfortable doing, okay? So now you've got these really nice bluish pine trees in the back, and they could be a lighter color. Mine are a little dark. They could be lighter. If they're lighter, they're going to be kind of in mist a little bit. So I'm adding these pine trees. And what I'll show you what I'll do to thicken out the forest without having to do one tree at a time. However, right now I am doing kind of one tree at a time. And again, it's just scribbles that are shaped to a pine tree. So let yourself scribble. And I've got these small ones here. And so if you feel like you can add more right now without adding any lines like this, feel free. I show everybody how to use these lines because for some people it's a nice guide, okay? And you could see some of the line sometimes. See? And I'm just scribbling and shaping those pine trees. And yours can definitely be different than mine. We're okay with that. I'm gonna go back here, do the same thing. And I just keep going. And I can always add some. So let me show you this really quick. In the middle, I can add another treetop with just a scribble and a point. So I could fill out my forest more if I want to with a scribble and a point. Scribble, point. So you could definitely layer some trees back there too to fill out your forest. So go ahead and take your time. Again, if I've already filmed it and you're watching this a little later, you can pause it, okay? So let's take our time to get those pine trees back there. And again, I'm adding another layer back there. You could see I'm just adding a little point of my pine tree if I want to fill it in more. So again, I do this every day, so I might have been faster than what you were wanting. Feel free to pause, okay? And now you can see I'm actually taking a really watery brush, hardly any pigment, and I'm even gonna add like a really faint couple trees back there. And that'll just mean they're back in the mist if you feel like doing that. Hardly any pigment, hardly any paint on my brush, and I'm just kind of adding the kind of trees that are way back there. I could even use a napkin to get rid of pigment or some extra water. And I'm just shaping trees way in the distance. I don't even know if you can see that on camera, but it's really faint. See? So I can add as many of those faint ones as I'd like. And don't worry about this bleed here, it'll come up, okay? We're not worried about that. So go ahead and take your time to get those trees in. What I'm doing here, just so you know, I'm cleaning up. I took a clean brush and I'm pulling up any pigment I don't want there. And you could use a napkin, I use my fingers. I'm pulling up any pigment there that I don't want. All right, so go ahead and take your time to do those. Again, if I start too soon on this next part, you can always pause it. And so the look we're going for here is so different because we aren't filling up our white page, okay? It's more of type of like an illustration look or something you might see in like a book. Great, so now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna get the bottom area here. So I can add some brown for the dirt, I can add some green, whatever color. I'm gonna start with some brown. And I'm gonna go ahead, you could grab a larger brush at this point. It doesn't have to be huge, but bigger than this tiny point. And I'm just gonna go in and kind of sweep some brown down here. So we know there's some dirt here, even behind you can see like behind the tent. I'm just sweeping little shades of brown, but I'm also gonna repeat that step with some green, okay? So green of your choice. I'm gonna use my sparkle green because I'm a little obsessed with these sparkly greens I made, or sparkly colors, not just the green. And I'm adding some little bit of green in there. Notice I'm not fully covering the brown, I'm just adding a touch, a little bit over it, a little on the side, so I can see some brown and some green still, okay? So you go ahead and add that part, okay? So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to get my tent colored in, okay? And so it can take, again, not a tiny, tiny brush, but just like a medium-sized brush. And we're going to want to bleed this out, just not too much. So this is when the control matters. So I'm going to add a little water to just the center, okay? The reason I want to keep it away from the edges, if it bleeds out to the edges, takes away our pine trees. So first I'm going to start with some yellow, and I'm going to place that right in the center. You can see it's not bleeding too much. It is growing, but it's not bleeding too much. I take my brush and kind of guide it. So now I can kind of move the bleed where I want. Notice I'm kind of using the side of my brush, and I'm moving the bleed of the paint outward. I'm adding some more yellow as I want. And I'm starting from the middle, kind of moving outward towards the edges. So go ahead and do that with a little yellow. And at this point I can even take an orange if I'd like. So I have this kind of, it's kind of a yellowish orange, but you can use any kind of orange. And I'm just going over like around that yellow a little bit. And it's okay if I go in the yellow, I actually want to do that. Right? So it looks kind of like, I don't know, it has a center, almost like an egg, but with different colors. So it has the middle yolk part and then this part around it, or like a flower. going to grab a light brown of my choice or a brown of my choice. And I'm going to do the opposite. Instead of going out, I'm going to start from the outside in. And you can see how I'm doing that. And I'm bringing it inward. So now it kind of looks like my tint is glowing, but I don't want just these 3 layers, so I'm gonna nicely roll a little bit of, bring the brown in a lot. Really softly though. I'm not pushing down hard, I'm just lightly moving the colors together. I may even take a little brown on my brush and kind of guide it through. So it has little patches of brown. Act like you're adding a little bit of dirt or something to the tint. But really you're adding some shadow, so it doesn't just look like one color. And there you've got that bleed of colors. I can layer as I'd like. I can grab a little extra yellow and add that. That kind of gives the sense that the tint is glowing. I can add a little more of that orange wherever I want. So I can kind of dab that in over and over lightly. And not in perfect patches like a quilt, but more like I'm just adding a touch of it here and there. Okay, and a little with my brown again. Okay, and I just keep layering till it looks good to me. So to me that looks good. I've got some yellow, I've got some orange. Definitely have some brown patches in multiple places so it doesn't look too perfect, right? So I'm not going for perfection and exact squares or circles or quilted layers. So now I've got that nice little glow. Another great thing you can add at this point is to pull up some of that paint. So I take a clean brush and I pull up a little by rolling it kind of towards the middle a little bit. And that brings up the white of the paper. And what that white does is give it a nice glow. So that little bit of, I'm pulling it just a little, and I'm pulling up that paint, just a little of it. And you can use a towel or your finger. And there you go, I have a glow now, a soft white glow. And every fire that you paint or anything with a glow, whether it's a fireplace or it's a fire pit, whatever you're painting that has a glow is usually gonna have a white center, really, even if it's really small. So that white center is really making it look like my tent is glowing. Now we'll get to the details of the tent very soon, but I'll let you go ahead and work on that tent for a bit, okay? Take your time, and remember, after I post this, pause as much as you'd like. You can even do it in different days, in different sittings. Great, and because we talked about this being kind of like an illustration or something you would find in a book, we are gonna hang on to our pens for once this dries. So usually what I would tell you right now would be detail using paint, but we're not gonna do that. We're gonna leave the tent like that, and at the very end, I'll show you what to do with your marker or your pen that you have for illustration, okay? And so we're gonna keep going. So we're gonna just kind of, this is a unique type of style, and I think you guys will have fun with it. So next I'm gonna take this orangish color. And again, anything I do is optional. If you're like, no, I don't really like it like that, I wanna change it, I don't wanna add this, you don't have to. This is your piece. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna be a little creative by adding this kind of coming out of that blue I created. That blue that, again, that's our first time that we didn't pull our color out without a tape border. So whenever we pulled our color out, we had a tape border if we didn't want to color it all the way in, or we just got to the end of our page. This time we're doing a different style, an illustration style. You see this on t-shirts, in books, on all over the place. It's kind of a more modern way of creating. So I'm going to go in and I'm going to add a circle that's halfway in that blue and partially outside of that blue. See that? An orange circle. And with that, I'll go ahead and color it in, and I could be slightly watery. Whoops. And don't worry about mistakes like that. We could always fix them. And I've slightly watered. That's when you get kind of slightly watery, that's the risk, is that you drip everywhere. And so here, I kind of bring the orange out a little. And in that moon that I'm adding, and I know it's like a golden color, and a moon a lot of time is white, but that's the fun of illustration. We can change it. Now I'm adding a little bit of yellow. Just a touch. And look at what a difference that made. At this point, if I wanted, I could even add a little bit of red. And we'll see what that does. So see that touch of red? Just add some depth. So I've got a medium color, which is my orange. I've got a light color, which is my yellow, and a deeper color, which is my red. Notice I go in like a C shape when I do that. Now I've got so much depth. Orange, red, yellow, and the colors they make mixed together. So that's pretty unique. I always like to go in with the lighter color again. That's just me. You don't have to. And I'll even take a dry brush to like blend that in. Clean brush, I mean. Doesn't have to be dry, just clean. There we go. We got a moon. And again, if you want to do a different color, it's totally fine. All right, and you could see that has a glow to it as well. So much so I want to add a little bit more yellow around my white here to give a similar glow to my tint. Okay, and that's what art is going and kind of stopping and saying, hey, I want to add this now. Or this looks like I can use a little more glow as it dries. And so I'm going in with some of that orange, and I'm repeating that step that was like the flower, except now I have the white in the middle. Adding some orange. And even some brown again. So it's kind of just adding some more colors as I go if I feel like it's not glowing enough for me, especially after adding that moon. That inspired me to create more of a glow on my tint as well and be a little more dramatic with the colors I chose. And I'm just kind of adding multiple colors in there, keeping that white the way it is, or I can even do like a light shading over the white, really light. Still have that white glow though, that's important. And that was just me pulling up the pigment like that roll. Great. So any mistakes that happen, like that one, that kind of, I just take a little water, fade it out first. And I can always go in with like another blue, with my blue, and kind of just shade that a little. And so what I'm doing is trying to fix that dot I dropped. I just added a little bit of blue and water to my brush, and I'm just kind of going over it and fading it out. There we go. And I can always do that a couple layers to fix it, or I can say, you know what, there's a tree back here. So you can definitely do that if you want. It's up to you. And I actually really like how I added the tree there. And then I can always add in that second layer we talked about. There we go. And as it dries, I have more chance to fix that as I would like to. All right, so now let's go ahead. I'm deciding on whether I want to add a fire or not. And then we'll finish off with the illustration part, which is using the pen over that. Let's actually start with something else. So we're gonna go in and we're gonna add some trees that are in the foreground. So these trees are far back. We're gonna bring some trees up closer near the tent, okay? And so doing that, I'm gonna grab a dark brown, okay? So, or any brown that you'd like. So I'm gonna grab this brown. It looks light because I've been layering it. And I made this brown, and it's one of my coffee collection. So this is a caramel mocha or caramel macchiato. I'm trying to remember my name still. If you have a better name, let me know. And so I'm taking this brown, and I'm gonna go kind of in front, and this is illustration, so it doesn't have to be 100% realistic, but we do like to know that we have that option if we'd like. Everybody's illustration styles are different. Okay. So I'm going off a little thicker, and as I go up, I'm gonna make this thinner, okay? And I'm gonna do that behind this. And again, it's thicker and a little thinner, so behind that tent. And here as well, thicker and thinner. And you might place yours a little different. Again, we're trying to keep everything within the blue, except for, you know, when we purposely do it. And back here, I'm gonna do another one. So these trees are closer, and they're gonna create even more depth. So I've got my really light trees in the back that were super watery. I've got the thicker blue trees, which are a little closer to the tent, and I've got these brown trees, which are much closer. And so I can layer these trees with different browns. I can even add some black in them if I really wanna get with detail. So I can definitely do that. And I'm layering a second time because I could see a lot of blue through them. So I'm just adding some more pigment, meaning more paint, less water to them. Okay, so once I add those, I'm gonna go ahead and grab a green. So I need to make a forest green. This is something that I've been saying I need to do. So I'm hoping to do that soon. But you may have a forest green on your palette. If you don't, I will show you how to make one. So you can go ahead, and I'll make it on my tin here. I'm gonna grab some regular green and just add it to my, you know, if yours is plastic, you can use your plastic wherever you're mixing your paint. You can see I've mixed a ton on this palette. Great thing is water takes it right off if I run it under the water. So here, and I'm just gonna add a tiny bit of black. And what do you know, I've got pretty much close to a forest green. You can even layer in some brown if you wanted, but I'm just gonna use green and black. And then I've got a pretty good forest green there. And you can always alter that with a little bit of yellow or blue or brown. And I'm gonna go in and just add some green here. And so I'm adding some blue because I wanna add like a pretty deep color that shows up pretty bright. And you can see that these are a little different than my trees in the back. They kind of have some, we want to see the brown through them. See that? And so as they go here, they're kind of pointing down, they're heavy. We have a lot of pines like this over here. And they're definitely shelves, but they're more spread apart, and I can see the pine trunk through them. And here as they go up, it gets thinner, and they're just scribbles that kind of make the shape of that pine tree. And I can put some that are just hanging out, not attached to anything, right? I'm gonna even add some down here. So again, we wanna go on with pretty thick pigment, because if we go on with thick pigment, we could actually look like the foreground. We're covering our background. So this is when we have less water and definitely more paint. And this also reminds me I need to make a pretty good forest green soon. Awesome. So you can see how I did that, and you're going to do that for all of your pines. If you want to get really realistic and really detailed, you can add a little bit of black to your pines, especially down here or on one side, to create that shadow. So I'm going to add just a little bit of black, some little streaks of black, and then I'm going to go in and finish that green area, okay? With my different greens I have here and my forest greens. So I've got different greens, and I'm just going to do the same thing. So take your time to do your foreground trees, okay? Again, if you want to really take your time, you can let the background dry and come back to this in another sitting, okay? It could be the same day, just later, or take a little breather. It's up to you. And so the reason these have a deeper color is these are closer to our tent. So anything that's closer to us, we can always see the detail a little more. The color of it, the true color, you know, the shadow, everything. But when pine trees or any trees are way far away, kind of blend in together into either black or blue, depending on the time of day. Now I've got these trees in the front. They're just scribble shelves, and these ones are pointing down a little more. They're heavier as they go down to the bottom. Awesome, so now I've got this foreground of trees, so that my tree doesn't look like it's just floating there. I'm actually gonna take maybe like let's see, maybe this green or like this brown here, whatever I want. And I'm just gonna kind of add like a little, maybe even some black to add a shadow here. And I can even put some black in here if I want. So I'm lightly sweeping some black through. And that just looks like there's some dirt under there. And I could sweep that through if I want. Got some brown in there. And I could always go back in with some green in there too. So I swept a little brown. Now I'm gonna sweep a little green, and I'm just layering again like we did. We do a lot of layering. I'm adding some green. And all of a sudden that turned into look like a rock once it bled a little. I love when that happens without even trying. Okay, and I'm gonna even throw in some of that glitter green because again, I'm obsessed. You don't need to. But this glitter green that I made and sweeping through that. Okay, and it's almost time for your pen work, okay? So I'll give you a minute to work on that. Take your time, and again, you could pause. Great. So again, pause as much as you'd like. I'm going to take some black paint and I'm going to go right under my tint. And you can see that I made a little mistake there, but I'll fix it. So I'm going right under my tent with the black paint. And that part's scary because you can mess up really easy like I did, which is no big deal. I can pull up this pigment if I need to with a dry or a clean brush. And here, I'm just gonna spread that black out, just so it doesn't look drippy. I'm gonna guide the drip. And that just looks like a shadow. Okay, so you're almost ready for your pen work. We aren't going to do a fire today, just because I don't wanna overwhelm you too much. However, in the future, we will redo this with a fire. Fires are pretty hard to do. As you can see, you got a lot of good practice with this glowing moon and this glowing tint. And so the fire will be a lot easier after a painting like this. But for now, we'll start with these two. But if you're feeling brave and you want to add a fire, go for it. So again, this is really similar to kind of like an illustration style where we don't even cover all the white. However, you can see a lot comes with that when we start to add like a little bit of, we get our fingers on it. So I'll show you a little trick at the end that makes it look like we kind of did that on purpose. That's a fun thing that you can do in case you get a little frustrated. One way to avoid this is to tape it off and at least the edges so that if your fingers touch them, you don't get it. But I'm not really worried about it. I don't really mind. All right, so this is when the illustration part comes out, meaning when we start using pen. So usually I would say let this dry, but since this is a one sitting video, I am not gonna let it dry and I'm gonna keep going. And from there you'll see what might happen if you don't let it dry. So I would suggest letting yours dry before you do this. But again, I've done this a lot, so I kind of know how to break the rules a little if I need to. So I'm gonna take this one is an ultra fine point Sharpie, but if you have a micron pen or ballpoint pen, any type of pen, it works. If you don't have a pen and you only have black watercolor, you can totally do that too. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna sketch around, and notice I'm not looking for perfection. I want the sketchy look. However, that's just a common style in illustration. You might feel like, well, I'm a perfectionist, so I'm going to make perfect lines. That's okay. That's just your style, and that's your personality, and there's nothing wrong with that. So I just went around my little tent like that. And on my tent, I'm gonna add even little like V's right here, which are just like the part, like little sticks they might have used to build it. And back here, and see this isn't dry, so as I go over it, I can tell that. So I added another V there. now I'm going to bring this in the front. And again, you're going to notice what happens as it doesn't dry. So I wasn't able to get the V because it's not dry, but I can go and do that little V after. And again, you don't have to do those. Those are just because I want mine to look like it was made out of little sticks or something. And I'm going down here. Like that. And here, adding another stick there. Okay, and again, that's with my pen. Or of course, you can do it with black watercolor paint. So I'll give you a minute to get that. So now I'm going to go ahead and put a line down the middle, not all the way. It's going to stop right there. And then I'm going to kind of bring it to the side a little, like that. This makes me want to go camping. So art's a great way, like no matter how you're feeling, it's a great way to travel to wherever you want, just like books are. The thing with books is usually that's what where the author's taking you. But with art, you can decide to go wherever you want. Even if it's a world you invented in your head, which is really interesting. Okay, so you've got that point, right? And let's see, okay. Then I'm gonna do a little like triangle right here, and that's gonna be like the opening of the tent. It's kind of gonna tell us the tent is flipped open, okay? Then from there, I'm gonna add another little side right there. However, this part is gonna be colored in. And you may do your tent a little different. It's totally up to you. And I color that part in. So that looks like the little part of the tent is open. Okay. There you go, you've got your tent. Now what you can do, because this is illustration style, I won't do all of it because not all my painting is dry, but I will show you and tell you what you can do as an illustration, which is really neat. So you can go in, and if I wanted, I can go around this and do the same thing. A lot of times this kind of stuff makes everybody nervous, but I'm used to it, and the only way to get used to it is to just go for it. So I've got that around there. I can go in and do the same with my trees and add like some pen work to my trees, meaning I'm kind of going over the tree with a little bit, especially my foreground. Don't worry about doing that with your way background, but my foreground I can add some pen work. You could see a little bit of that right there, but these trees are still wet, so I would say to wait for those to dry to do that. And it's not tracing every individual thing. When I'm working with stuff like these pine trees that are kind of messy, you're only adding touches of it. So I'm going to do it in black with this marker, because marker is easy to do it with. So you can see that I'm just adding some touches of black. And what that does for my viewer is that makes it come out even more powerful, and that makes my viewer feel like those trees are closer, and the eye to go more to the foreground. And then after the eye goes to the foreground, it starts to see that background and all that detail and that layering you put in. So you can see I'm not perfectly tracing. I'm kind of just adding little scribbles to bring that tree forward. And you can see what a difference that made. I don't know if the camera's picking that up, but it made a huge difference in that tree. Otherwise, all my trees kind of blend in, and I'm not noticing these trees are closer. And again, this is a style, like an illustration style you'll see in books, children's books, comics, all kinds of things, even on shirts and mugs and hats, and near beaches you'll see a lot of illustration style like this of the ocean and surfboards and stuff. And you can see I did that there. So that means we're not going for 100% realism, because in real life stuff is not outlined in black. But that's okay. Art isn't about always mimicking real life. It's about having fun and making your viewer and yourself feel something incredible. See, and now I've got that one, and here's, last but not least, here's this guy who did a little bit of bleeding. meaning the water was kind of blending colors together. Great thing about trees and nature, if it does, no big deal. It's just a mossy tree. And it's pretty wet, but I'm trying to show you still anyway how I can bring that out. So again, I would, if I were you, let these dry first, but I wanted to show you how that would look. And so you can now see those trees stand out a little more. And so this marker is for my Cricut machine, but you can get any calligraphy marker like this. So this is more of a marker and less of a pen. And you can see it goes on a little thicker. And I can go through my pen work a little to darken it, but also keep some of the pen lines also. So I'm just showing you the difference if you choose a marker or pen. I actually like to have both handy because I like how both of them look on this style or different styles. So you can see there's my illustrated camping scene. If you get a bunch of little splatters like I do here, I always get them in this corner. If you want to be really creative and you're really brave, you could take a brush. I like using wiry chip brushes. You may feel more comfortable with something else. Let me show you what it is. And once I show you, you could probably decide which brush would look good. So like a frayed brush is kind of good for this. These are big, but take this one. So I'm gonna take a lot of water, different colors of my choice. So I'm gonna go for blue because it will look like it's kind of mimicking this blue here. And I'm gonna go for a deep blue, a light blue, and I wanna make it, and I'm gonna splatter, lightly pull back and splatter around the sides. Don't pull back too much because it'll get everywhere. If I pull back very little, I have a little bit of control. And I can go around the white. And if it gets in the middle a little, no big deal. It's supposed to look like splattery art, right? And so I can do that and you will hardly notice any of the little smudges here. And I can repeat that with any colors that I want. So I'm going with orange now. And I can just go around the white. And that's another style that you're going to see often, and another technique you're going to see often in like the illustration styles. And you again layer it as much as you want. And there you go. There's your camping scene. Again, you can add whatever you'd like, omit or take away whatever you'd like. And I really, really hope you enjoy this. Remember that you can take this in pieces. You don't have to do this all at once. And again, if you have any questions, feel free to leave a comment here, or you could send a question on our page, whatever works for you or your parents. Thanks for joining us, and thank you for creating with me.